For all the rallies, calls to action, national conversations, and billions of dollars in government funding, the statistics are getting worse. Last year, 79 women were killed in domestic violence incidents. That number was 64 in 2023 and 57 in 2022.
This is the most prolific human rights abuse in the world. We need to protect women's ability to come forward and speak about it, because we can't possibly begin to grapple with the problem if we don't know the extent of it.
Jennifer Robinson made headlines as the lawyer who helped secure the release of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. But she's also worked on some of the world's most high-profile gender-based violence cases and free speech cases. She says the law is being used as a tool to silence women both here in Australia and overseas.
In the wake of the Me Too movement, where women were breaking the cultural silence, we've seen this raft of defamation claims here in Australia and around the world in response to women speaking out in the media or online about their experiences. The way those cases are conducted and what happens with those cases is having an impact. And actually what we see in the media is only the tip of the iceberg, because so much of what we see in terms of people sending defamation threat letters, that results in self-censorship. So a lot of stories are spiked, women aren't speaking out publicly, they self-censor because of the risk of defamation proceedings.
So are you saying it's the whole Me Too movement in terms of what's ended up in courts had the reverse effect?
Well, the legal backlash that we're seeing, the way that women are being attacked online for speaking out, who would want to speak out if what happened to Brittany Higgins is going to happen to other women? That's why we need to better protect women, to encourage them to come forward, because it's not in the public interest for women to keep silent about this.
The critics of the Me Too movement, though, say, well, these claims should be dealt with in the courts, not in the media, and that the media is taking the place of a proper system.
Our courts couldn't possibly deal with the number of cases that we know exist. In New South Wales, 1 in 10 men have been reported to the police for domestic violence. 1 in 10. And that's just what's been reported. This is a cultural problem that we need to be able to talk about.
What impact does telling these stories in the media actually have, though? Who does it help?
It helps so many people. It is important when a woman sees another woman speak out, it often encourages them to come forward.
But it can destroy a lot of lives, including the person making the claim.
It is a very personal decision to speak out, and people need to understand the potential legal consequences and risks and the personal cost. The cost of legal proceedings in women defending themselves, it could bankrupt a person. And so what does your free speech mean if you can't afford to defend it?
Jen says even her A-list client, Hollywood actress Amber Heard, came close to bankruptcy because of the US defamation claim against her.
I listened to the podcast series about Amber Heard. I don't understand what happened. From your point of view, what's the truth of it?
We proved in court that Johnny Depp was violent towards her on 12 separate occasions. There's a written judgment that shows that. So in the United Kingdom, she's a recognised survivor of domestic violence. He then sued her personally in the United States, and it went before a jury who was untrained about myths about gender-based violence. They were seeing the online space. What we now know from that podcast is that the online space was manipulated.
By who?
That's an excellent question. The podcast shows a lot of the inauthentic activity had historically been Saudi government bots. Now, what the connection is between whoever was behind it and Amber Heard, the point being that the online space was manipulated in a way to give the public and the jurors a particular perception of that case and of Amber Heard, which does not reflect the woman I know, the client I represented, and the facts as I know them. And we're seeing it again now with Blake Lively.
The case taking on a life of its own in the court of public opinion, and now the high drama bleeding into the federal courtroom.
Are you saying that there's deliberate smearing?
Blake Lively's allegation is that there was a deliberate smear campaign run against her, which we saw in the context of the publicity for the film It Ends With Us. She's now sued, saying that this was retribution by Justin Baldoni and the team, using the same PR team as Johnny Depp had used in the United States case. So there are parallels between the kind of conduct that is at least being alleged in her case.
We're living in interesting times. The United States has a new president. Is the game over for people like you who are fighting for human rights when there's a president like Trump who doesn't really seem that interested in it?
Human rights are more important than ever under a president like President Trump. What we're seeing him say about the Ukraine, these are important international law issues that have massive human rights implications. And so for me and for my colleagues, it gives us more reason to be doing what we're doing.
Do you feel inspired by our leaders here?
I do feel inspired by certain people in politics in this country. I'm proud that we have a Prime Minister who grew up in public housing, and I think we need to protect our democracy to make sure that that remains a possibility for kids coming up in this country. I think it's great that we've got so many fantastic independent women in our parliament. who are challenging the status quo.
Do you see a promising new generation of leaders coming through in Australia?
I do see some remarkable young women coming up being more vocal in the media space, in the online space, people like Chanel Contos, Hannah Ferguson. I have hope for the future when I see young women like that.